How important is mindset to a farmer? Actually, what inspired me to talk about this, though, is that on this week's podcast, Food Farmers and Fun, Food Flowers and Fun, Franchesca Duval talks about, I've got the quote here, if you're working with integrity, you are having such a profound and positive impact on the world. Trust that and let that be your fuel for those hard moments. And so it got me to thinking about this whole idea of what is integrity, which has also got me into the whole idea of what is a mindset, because integrity is a mindset first and foremost. It is something that we commit to. It's something that we believe in, and it's something that then we put into action. And I'm going to be talking about different mindset shifts that we have to make as farmers in order to stay strong and capable, and to be able to withstand all the challenges that come in this very challenging business. So in sports, when we're talking about the mindset of a champion, you hear words like mental toughness, you hear hard work, you hear self-control, self-belief, self-confidence, lots of strong self words. You also hear things about finding pleasure and enjoyment in the process. And when we're talking about the mindset of a farmer, all of these things also apply. So let's kind of backtrack a little bit and look at this specific area of mindset that we call integrity. So first of all, before we can farm with integrity, we have to actually know what integrity means, right? Well, I went to my good old Oxford Dictionary online and found that there were two basic components. The first one was honesty and moral uprightness. And then the second one was wholeness and undividedness. So because I like to pick apart things, let's go back to that moral uprightness. I had to pause for a little bit on that whole moral part, because we live in a world where there are people with lots of different beliefs. We have different religious beliefs. We have different farming beliefs. We have different philosophical beliefs, environmental beliefs, like lots of different beliefs. And many of those beliefs somehow become a sense of morality for us as well. And so what happens if you are living in a society like ours that hopefully respects a diversity of opinions and still wants to value moral uprightness? That's a good question, I thought. So as I kind of pondered this, I went back to my college philosophy class and I thought about Kant and his categorical imperative. But the basic principle of Kant's categorical imperative is that before you do anything, you ask yourself, would it be okay if everybody in the world did this? That puts you, start thinking about that. You go to jaywalk. It's okay to jaywalk. There's plenty of space. I see that car coming. I know what's going on. Not a problem. I can jaywalk. What if everybody jaywalked? What if every single person that you saw on the sidewalk decided to jaywalk? Would that still be okay? Well, I would argue no, not really, because you would never know when somebody was just gonna step out in front of you in traffic. This is actually why they put laws against jaywalking on the books, because back when we were first having streets and horses and, oh gosh, when the horses and the cars and the trolleys were all together, you want to see some chaos? You go look up something around the early 1900s in New York City and just do a Google search of streets in New York City in 1901, and you will see the most mayhem that you have ever seen. It's terrifying. And the surprise is not that people died, it's that more people didn't die. So, that's a very small part of what the categorical imperative is, but think about it in your farming life. So maybe there are water laws that you are really struggling with because you don't like the water laws. Well, think for a minute, if everybody, dumped their pesticide water in the brook. Okay, one person dumping one rinsed out pesticide container in the brook, probably not a big deal, right? But what if everybody were doing it? What happens when every farmer makes that decision on their farms? What happens to the whole system? And when you start looking at things from that perspective, it really does give us a pause, and it does make us start to question some of the behaviors that we might think are perfectly okay. The second part of this, though, because we've got the moral uprightness, and so we're saying, okay, if we're going to use the, basically do to others as you want them to do to you, as the categorical imperative, we also need to be honest about it. And that's why I almost didn't put the honesty in this talk, and then I realized that the honesty was absolutely critical in order for the moral uprightness to even happen. Because if we're not being honest with ourselves about what we're doing and the impact it has on the people around us, on the environment, on people far away from us, if we're not being brutally honest about that for ourselves, we're going to make excuses, and we're going to slide down a very slippery slope of making decisions that are not good for anybody. Never mind good for everybody. If you've got kids, you know what this is like. It's, that little bit of honesty where they steal one cookie and they're like, well, I couldn't help it, I was hungry. You let them get away with it, and then all of a sudden you're like picking them up at the police station because they're stealing something out of the grocery store, and you're like, where did you learn that? And it's like, oh, we kind of taught them it was okay to steal in little ways, and so then they figured it was okay to steal in big ways, because honestly, that's what the categorical imperative says to us. So we have to be honest with ourselves and with others about the impacts of the actions that we make. So that's the first half of this, farming with integrity, is to, be morally upright and honest. The second part is talking about wholeness and undividedness. And, that word wholeness is just, for me, that's having such a beauty. And basically what that means is that you are behaving the same way wherever you are, whether somebody else is there to see it or not. Now, if you're anything like me, as soon as you heard those words, you thought, oh, I'm not always whole, am I? Like, there are some things that I've done that I would never do if somebody was, right there staring at me. Like, I might pick my nose in the car, but if I knew that the person going down the road actually saw me picking my nose, I probably wouldn't do that. We've all done stuff like that, right? So let's think about that wholeness and undividedness. Another way to look at it is to practice what we preach. And, as a parent, I think that was one of God's big gifts of parenthood for me, is that I could think I was a really good person. I made a lot of really good decisions until I had children. And then I had these beautiful little angels who were like mini mirrors. And what I said and what I thought and the actions I made, they just came right back at me, usually at the most inconvenient times, right? And the truth is that is, if you're anxious about that, if you're one of those parents who's like, do not ever repeat this outside of this house, chances are, and again, we have all done it. We have all done it. Co-parenting with an ex is a really, really good exercise in becoming more whole, because I very quickly got to the point where I was like, my kids are going to say all kinds of things. And if they're going to repeat what I say, I want to make darn sure that they're repeating kind things. Now, I don't know if they always present what I say the way that I've actually said it or how I actually intended it, but the goal is less to have them do the right thing by repeating my words accurately, and more for me to do the right thing by using the kind of words and actions and showing the spirit that I want to have wherever I am. So that means that the way that I am in my home should be the way that I am in my church. It should be the way that I am at the kids' school. It should be the way that I am when I'm driving down the road in my car. That's what it means to be whole and to be undivided. It means that everything that we do in every area of our life is coherent, and that there is no place in our life that we keep as a dirty secret, that we are like, oh yeah, I would never want this getting out. Because if we don't want it getting out, chances are there's a part of us that doesn't really want to be doing it or saying it or experiencing it in the first place. And there's all kinds of help we can get for that. But that's, you can talk to me about that. We'll talk about what kind of support you need in that area. So as we're looking at this wholeness and undividedness and practicing what we preach, how do we do that in our farms? Well, that means that if we believe that biodiversity is an important thing, and we feel like it's really important to make sure that our whole farm works as an ecosystem, it means that we have to actually take the steps to make sure that's happening. And so we're going to have to maybe make decisions between which values, because sometimes we have those competing values that we've talked about before. Sometimes you've got values that are seemingly in opposition. So maybe you need to pay your bills and you want to support biodiversity. So how can you find a way to farm in a way that allows you to make a decent living and still use practices that might be a little bit more labor intensive, a little less financially streamlined, because you're meeting those values? And how do you decide which of those values trumps which at any given point? That is way beyond the scope of a 15-minute 15-minute case coffee clutch. But it is a really important area to think about. And so as I go back to this statement by Franchesca Duval, and please do go watch her. So definitely go and see it, because she is really inspirational and just an amazing woman. But this quote: if you're working with integrity, you are having such a profound and positive impact on the world. Trust that and let that be your fuel for those hard moments. And what I take away from that is that it's hard to live with integrity. Okay, let's be honest. To be morally upright, to be honest with ourselves and with others, to be whole and to be undivided, to be the same person you are in private as you are in public, to practice what you preach, to really implement the things that you say are important, that takes hard work. And yet what Franchesca is saying is that when you do that hard work, you are having an impact on the world. That word profound, it means something so deep and meaningful and so much wider and more influential than you possibly can imagine. And that is going to lift up the people around you, the world around you, and you can dig into that for fuel to say, this is who I really want to be in the world. And even if it's hard, it's worth it, because I get to be who I want to be. And that mindset shift, that is one of the keys to being the farmer that you want to be, and to having the farm life that you would be proud to have your children carry on. And remember, it's your time to grow.